and gentlemen, delighted to be here this afternoon at my second EDUConvEx to add a Scottish dimension to our conversations and explorations that Professor Pant referred to this morning. Always find it slightly nervous speaking towards the end of a day of a conference, because you come along with your presentation at the start of the day, which you can't change, regardless of what it says, and you listen very carefully to try to make sure that what you're going to say fits with the theme of the day and fits with the things that other people have been saying over the course of the day. But I've been getting slightly more relaxed over the course of the day because I think and hope what I've got to say fits in with many of the themes that have been raised during the course of the day. What I'm going to talk about is curriculum design for the 21st century, the Scottish experience, and I'm going to talk about a piece of work which is very much work in progress in Scotland at the moment, a major curricular reform that we've been involved in now for almost 10 years and are just approaching the kind of key points of implementation. So as I say, I intend to talk you through that programme, explain some of the background to it and the thinking behind it in terms of our thinking about curriculum design for the 21st century. The programme goes under the name of Curriculum for Excellence. It's named within Scotland, within the Scottish system, and so you'll see that banner on every slide from here on. A lot of debate about the differences between Scotland and the rest of the UK, between Scotland and England. Many of you will know, I'm sure, that Scotland has a different education system from the rest of the UK, has traditionally and perhaps increasingly has a different education system. And the starting point for this curricular reform is the Education Scotland Act in 2000, which said this about the purpose of education, that it should be directed to the development of the personality, talents, mental and physical abilities of the child or young person to their fullest potential. And picking up the theme of stakeholder involvement, the Act also goes on to talk about the importance of involving young people in important decisions that affect them as far as is practically possible. So there in the Act is set out the importance of involving learners in key decisions that affect them. So clearly in 2000 we already had a curriculum, we weren't starting from scratch. But the key thing was if the Act set that out of the purpose of education from there on, how do we know how well the current curriculum, the current education system equips young people, and what were the strengths and weaknesses of the system? What do we need to change? What do we need to build on? What do we need to change to help it achieve those aims more successfully? To try to establish that, the Scottish Government established the National Debate on Education, which again was a key piece of work, the biggest conversation that's ever happened in Scotland involving all key stakeholders in the education system, including schools, teachers, parents, universities, people in policy positions, people in organisations like my own, the Scottish Qualifications Authority. To really answer those questions, what are the key strengths of the education system as it stands, and what are those areas that we really need to address and to build on if we are to achieve that aspiration set out in the Education Scotland Act. So that work went on for about a year, and as you'd expect, there were some strengths, reassuringly, there were some strengths. And amongst the strengths that people identified within the existing curriculum were its flexibility, combination of breadth and depth in the curriculum, the quality of teaching, and the comprehensive principle, the fact that in Scotland there's a very small independent school sector and there are no grammar schools to speak of. All secondary schools are formed on the same basis, and typically children go to the school that's closest to them rather than being selected to go to a particular school. That was seen as a key strength of the system. This is balanced by the recognition of the need to reduce overcrowding and make learning more enjoyable, to make better connections between different stages of education, so that the children going from primary to secondary school, from secondary school to college, to university, felt the system was coherent and a single experience rather than being separated out in those chunks. To ensure that young people acquired the skills they needed for employment, and for employment in the 21st century, not the 20th century or any previous time. And finally, to allow more individual choice within the curriculum and within education for learners. Perhaps most importantly though, there was a sense and a very strong feedback that a significant proportion of young people in Scotland were not achieving all they were capable of within the current education system, and that the new curriculum needed to address that directly. So to respond to those findings, the Education Minister established a curriculum review group, again formed of all the key stakeholders, national agencies, parental groups, representative teachers of schools of higher education, and the schools inspectorate, to reflect on those findings and to establish their implications for the new curriculum. The Minister also asked that review group to look more widely and think about how we now have a better understanding of how children learn, to think about the influence of changing patterns of work now and as far as we can anticipate them in the future, and also to think about the potential of new technologies to enrich learning. That group worked for about a year, fairly quickly, and in 2004 produced outcomes which resulted in these high-level principles for the design of the new curriculum: a set of values on which the curriculum should be based, a definition of the purpose and the outcomes of the curriculum through to 18, and a set of design principles that should be used in delivering the curriculum. And I'm now very briefly going to run through the values, the purpose, and the design principles. Reassuringly, quite a lot of discussion in the last session about values and the importance of values, and I think one speaker particularly talked about the importance of developing leaders with values. The review group felt that the key aim of education is to instill in young people the values on which society is based. This allows them to reach their own informed position on issues of social justice, personal and collective responsibility. And the curriculum was seen as a key means through which those values could be instilled, demonstrated and acquired by young people. And these points set out the values. They largely speak for themselves, but I think the importance of points 1 and 2 are about the fact that all young people benefit from their education and value their learning and achievements. And perhaps the test of any education system is not how well it performs for its high achievers, because arguably the most able learners are always going to achieve well regardless of the system they're in. Perhaps the key test though is how the system caters for the majority of learners, and particularly those learners who are in the lower ability range, may need more support, more help, but have the potential to achieve great things. So those are the key points. The point about emphasising the rights and responsibilities, about understanding diverse cultures, developing things like tolerance, care, concern, enabling young people to build a strong foundation of knowledge on which they could base considered and ethical judgments and actions. And finally, they're talking about things again that have echoes of many of the speakers today, giving young people the confidence, attributes and capabilities to make valuable contributions to society. But what are those attributes and capabilities? And again, there's been lots of discussion. Our particular take in Scotland, the way we've set those out, is in the purposes of the curriculum. And we suggested the purpose of the curriculum should be to enable young people, all young people, to become confident individuals, effective contributors, responsible citizens, and successful learners. And again, we can spend a session unpacking those and describing what each of them mean. I hope, again, they speak for themselves largely. They are defined in more detail in the documents around curriculum for excellence, as well as the most legible slide because of the colours really within each box. The first bit, the with, defines the kind of skills, so the kind of attributes that a successful learner would have. So the first point is enthusiasm and motivation for learning. And the second point talks about their being able to, so the skills they need, for example, under being responsible citizens. The first skill is developing knowledge and understanding of the world and Scotland's place in it. So again, these purposes set out in a reasonable level of detail and provide a framework for delivery of the curriculum. In this work, it was also recognised that schools and teachers alone couldn't deliver all of these capacities, couldn't encourage, support, instill all of these capacities. So it recognised explicitly in the report of the review group that families and communities have an important role to play in the development of these capacities, complementing the work undertaken in schools. So really highlighting the importance of schools working collaboratively with parents, with communities, with other groups to instill and develop these capacities. Finally, the review group identified 7 principles for the delivery of the curriculum, and really these principles to be used by teachers in thinking about the content of their own classes, in working with young people, in structuring and designing learning opportunities for young people. I've deliberately not put these in order because they aren't in order. There's not a hierarchy, and that's one of the key points of the principles, that the review group recognised that although each of these principles should apply at all stages of education from 3 to 18, in practice the balance between them would and should change. So in the early years of education, for example, it's probably more important that young people experience a breadth of experience, of subject areas, of opportunities in their learning, whereas as they progress further up into higher levels of education, their focus may become more on depth, undertaking a smaller number of areas of study but in greater depth. In bringing in the role of stakeholders, the review group recognised explicitly that schools wouldn't be able to offer all these opportunities themselves, perhaps particularly around questions of personalisation and choice. But it highlighted the importance of schools looking beyond their own walls to opportunities of working with other educational institutions, colleges, universities, training providers, or with other local employers or any other agencies that could help broaden young people's experiences and help them develop the skills and knowledge they would need for the 21st century. The group also recognised the importance of the use of technologies and the potential of the use of technologies in this area, particularly perhaps in personalisation and choice, and the ability of technologies to link people in different parts of the world. And again, I noticed this morning, we're talking about their school had linked up with a school in Scotland to share information about energy use, and a fantastic example of the way in which technology can allow young people to experience things that they never have experienced a few years ago. So that's the backdrop to the design of the new curriculum. All of those principles, as I'm sure you'll understand, don't take the place of a subject-based curriculum. They really are the purpose, the values, the principles, the design principles that inform the delivery of the subject-based curriculum. Just briefly to explain where we are now, as I say, we really are in the thick of this development in Scotland at the moment. It is the major educational development programme involving all key educational bodies, and I think again that's critical to its success, and will be critical to its success. Everybody sees it as their role to implement curriculum for excellence, so if schools are doing things driven by one aspect of policy, they won't get the school's inspectorate coming in asking why they're doing that thing and judging them on a different set of criteria, so it's a very coherent national approach. Implementation began this year in the lower levels of schooling, and we're working up to the implementation of the first years of first new qualifications in 2013-14. You'll notice I haven't made any reference to the importance of teachers yet, but again, somebody mentioned this morning the fact that no change takes place in education without support, the buy-in, professional input of teachers. Again, that's absolutely been recognised in this programme, that there's an emphasis on equipping teachers with the skills they need for delivery of the new type of curriculum. And whilst teachers are welcoming that, there's also, as I'm sure you can imagine, a degree of nervousness and a degree of discomfort around having the skills to be able to do that. But perhaps that's natural. There's still work going on to define the precise role of ICT. The government is working out an ICT for education strategy, but I think we're recognised in Scotland having done some innovative and pioneering work in the use of technology for learning and assessment, some of which I talked about here last year, but another aspect of it being GLOW, what was the Scottish Schools Digital Network, the first time the country had implemented effectively a national intranet for all schools to support learning. So we have a good tradition to build on there. And we do see ICT as having an absolutely key place in the delivery of curriculum for excellence. And I suppose ultimately the punchline, the effectiveness of this reform won't be known for some time, if it's perhaps known ever. Again, I think John Kerr this morning referred to the timescales for the development and the implementation of new curriculum and new assessments. So it will be some time before we really know the outcome and how successful we've been. But just to conclude, to take you back to our objective, this was set out by the review group as the aspiration, what we needed in a new curriculum, to enable all young people to understand the world they're living in, to reach the highest possible levels of achievement, and equip them for work and learning throughout their lives. Thank you very much for your attention.